Hi, my name is Elle Billing. I am a chronically ill queer femme, and I'm tired. I'm here this episode and every episode to dig at the roots of our collective fatigue, explore ways to direct our care in compassionate and sustainable ways, and to harness creative expression to heal ourselves and to heal our world. Welcome to Hoorf, Radical Care in a Late Capitalist Hexscape. So, Ricki, we seem to
Uh-huh.
have a tradition of doing the last episode in December of us just throwing spaghetti at the wall.
Yep.
Although, to be fair, the first season we were pretty structured. We had written like mini book reviews
Yeah.
and like typed them out and we took turns and like it was super structured. And then last year we were like, Christmas, huh? What the hell? And this year we're like, we'll come with a bullet pointed list of things we could talk about. And we both showed up today like,
No list.
no list. We'll just record and see what happens.
Yep.
Who knows what'll happen next year? It might be two different people and a dog. Maybe we'll let Winkie do it next year.
You can't hear.
You know, that didn't stop my mom from trying to talk to her last night. She's like,
That's
Winkie,
true.
Winkie, Winkie. I'm like, mother.
We know she's deaf and we still try to talk to her.
I know, but like we at least like wave our hand while we're saying her name. And mom was
Yeah.
just like, Winkie. I'm like, Mom, I know she's sitting right next to you. And I know you've been gone for 10 days, but this is kind of like core information about the dog that I didn't think you would forget.
It happens.
Mhm. But yeah, mom was gone for 10 days and she got back yesterday and the dog did not leave her side, but also would not did not want to fall asleep at her normal like snoozing time in the evening. So she was like doing everything she could to try to stay awake, but also get scritches and cuddles. And so she did that thing where she was like sitting straight up on the couch like a people.
Like a people right on her butt instead of like on her haunches.
Yep, on her butt, straight up, kind of leaning into my mom like, "You can still scritch me like this. I mean, I know I'm a people, but you can rub my back. People get their backs rubbed." But then she fell asleep sitting straight up and her little elbows buckled underneath her
Ah,
and she kind of fell and then her eyes snapped open and she looked around like, "Did anybody see that? No, no, we're good. Okay." And I'm like, "You poor baby, just sleep. Just lay on grandma's lap and sleep. She's not going anywhere. She's home now. You're fine." It was cute. I got pictures. I'll probably have to use the picture of her sitting like a people when we post this when this
that
one
would
goes
yeah.
live. I'll put an emoji over Fancy Nancy's face. Probably the princess one. Although last night when Winkie was sitting like a people, my dad goes, "Well, we can tell who the queen of the castle is." And I was like, "Winkie?" She goes, and dad said, "Obviously."
Yeah.
Like, look at her sit over there on her throne.
So regal.
So regal, so demure. So anyway,
Mhm.
okay, I'm fine.
Okay.
Just kidding. Ugh. I hate winter.
Yeah.
The furnace is so like,
Yeah.
the
Oh
air
man.
is so dry.
Yeah. In the past 2 weeks we've had 3 radiator repairs.
In your unit or in your building?
In my unit, first the main valve on the bathroom radiator was leaking, and then the main valve on the one in my bedroom was leaking, and then like the little vent, the little whistly sound that everyone
Associates with radiators?
yeah, the part that does that was like shooting water out of it.
Oh my goodness.
But the thing was is like you never pay attention to the radiator. They're stuffed off in the corner and you just don't pay attention to them. So like all of those things had been leaking long enough that the neighbors downstairs were getting like water stains and stuff in their ceiling.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was awful. And like we don't know how long that had been going on because like they just moved in I don't know, 3 months ago or something like that. The lady that lived down there moved out over the spring, and like they redid the apartment. And then once the radiators started kicking in, they started getting water down there, and we're like, sorry, we'll sop it up, and I guess they'll have to call a plumber. And the plumber was like the worst plumber in the universe too. Like,
I bet
he's
he
just,
didn't even have his butt crack showing.
no, he didn't.
Is he even a professional?
I know, a professional something. Like, he got paid to do whatever he was doing, but it was using like non-plumbers tools. Like, the first thing he said when he showed up to do the bathroom one was like, I wish I'd brought a pipe wrench. I'm like, you're a plumber.
What did he bring? Thoughts and prayers?
A pair of pliers and an assistant.
I wish I'd bought a pipe wrench.
I was just flabbergasted by that guy. And then about, I don't know, a week had gone by after he finished the bathroom one, and the other two had been leaking. He came up and I guess he fixed them because they don't appear to be leaking anymore. While he was here, his van was parked out front, and his van got booted for some reason. Like, while he was here.
Oh,
I have no idea why. It was just, like, this guy was a comedy of plumbing errors. Like, I'm thankful that I have heat, and I'm thankful that our landlord is relatively responsive to repairs, but that guy was definitely like lowest bidder, you know? Like, I was amazed.
I'm all about working class solidarity, and like I don't want to shit talk the trades,
Right.
but at the same time, who doesn't bring a pipe wrench?
When you're a plumber. Yeah. Like, what the heck, man?
You know what that reminds me of? Speaking of people who don't bring tools for the job, the year I got stranded on New Year's Eve
Uh-huh.
because there was a valve malfunction on my plane. So I was supposed to fly from Fargo back to Twin Falls
Uh-huh.
on New Year's Eve, and I'm sitting in the Fargo airport, and they're like, "There's a mechanical problem. Our flight's going to be delayed. We've called the people, but it's a holiday, right?" So the guy gets there to fix the problem. It turns out it was like an air conditioning valve
Oh, yeah.
when it's like a million degrees below zero, right? And I'm like, we need an air conditioning valve in the winter. Okay. I don't know how planes work. They just go up, they go down, I get where I'm going. So the guy gets there and everyone cheers. We're like, woo, he's here. And then they're like, attention passengers waiting for Delta connection from Fargo to Salt Lake City. The mechanic brought a ladder that's too short. We're like, you are kidding me. So like he didn't bring the right ladder. You don't have those here for fixing your planes. I was like, oh my God. And so that must have been the end of 2014 into 2015, because I remember I was on you remember that stupid Bland Fest diet that I
Yes.
was on, trying to isolate my triggers for my migraine attacks. So I was out of food.
Yeah.
All I had in my bag was in my backpack was like a small bag of pumpkin seeds left. That's all I had left.
No.
I was so hungry, and there was nothing at the airport I could eat. I mean, I could have eaten it, but like my brain was so warped by the fear of inducing a migraine,
Yeah.
that I didn't dare eat anything. I was like,
Yeah.
is it worth it? Like, what's it gonna do to me? I've had like 10 years of practice now to like
Yeah.
get out of some of that fearful thinking. But so I'm sitting there super hungry, texting my ride who's supposed to pick me up in Idaho, and I'm like, I don't know if we're gonna get out of here. By the time we finally got out of Fargo, they had to put us up in a hotel in Salt Lake City
Ah.
because there were no more connections into Twin Falls or Boise or whatever. So my ride ended up driving to Salt Lake to meet me there
Aw.
and stay at the hotel with me, and then we just drove home. Like, I didn't even take my plane
Yeah.
from Salt Lake back to Idaho because like I already had a ride. So then we went out for Indian food, and I got non-alcoholic something, or like
Hmm.
a gluten-free Must have been like a gluten-free apple Angry Orchard or something, so we could have drinks for New Year's Eve. But it like the whole like he brought the wrong size ladder. I was like, you first it was like the fact that it was an air conditioning valve, and then the fact that the guy finally showed up with the wrong ladder was just like mind-boggling. Yeah.
Yeah.
My guest was flabbered.
I don't think I've ever heard that before.
Yeah. Anyway, how have you received care this week, Ricki?
Well, I suppose in the most literal sense, I had my first health exam that I've had in almost 2 years. It turns out just because between various events, traveling up there and back, things like that, I haven't actually had an appointment since January of 2023. And it was mostly because my doctor was finally tired of prescribing hormones without any blood work.
Seems important.
Yeah, so I had to get that in, and we discussed some other stuff relating to my transness, but arguably the biggest thing is, I mean, the most immediate thing. The other thing is big, but this is like currently actionable. Is I was talking about the struggle that I've had with ADHD like symptoms,
Mm-hmm.
and I've taken to calling it like not ADHD as like one word altogether, because like that's how it's been effectively handled by a lot of the professionals that I've dealt with.
Yeah, it's been super frustrating.
And like I had mentioned that like when I went and got my neuropsych eval, it felt really demeaning and dismissive, because one of the things that I struggle with is like I'm acknowledged smart, like all of the various batteries of tests that I've taken over my lifetime are like, this is a smart kid, and that tends to like cover for a lot of the dysfunction that I have in my life. So like I appear to be like a normal person, quote unquote normal person, to other quote unquote normal people. So when I go to try and get help, I get a whole lot of, you should just try harder, or try this next other journaling method, or like one of the things that I mentioned directly to my doctor is like I am willing to try just about any system there is, and I've tried a lot of them. That like I can't remember the name of it, but like the one where you do little chunks of time, you set a timer and you do a thing for a little while, and then the timer goes off and you do something else. I can't remember what it's called.
Pomodoro.
Yes, that. Like I can do that for a little while, but then it just stops working.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way it's been with like all of my various attempts at organization and executive functioning and planning and things like that. And I mentioned that the biggest problem for me isn't like hyperactivity. I don't have I'm my problem isn't bouncing from thing to thing to thing to thing. It's like starting and maintaining things,
Mm-hmm.
especially starting. I've said in like our personal conversations, but I actually said this to the doctor this time, is like I have to get up the gumption to take a shower. Like that's one of the things that I have to work up to personal care tasks and stuff like that. And
Mm-hmm.
he decided that we should try putting me on Wellbutrin on top of the Lexapro that I'm already taking for depression,
Mm-hmm.
because it can have some of the same activating effects that stimulants like Adderall and Vyvanse can give without being a stimulant. I was like, so if it's not an SSRI and it's not an SNRI, what is it? And he just goes, it's classified as other, which I thought was really funny, because like they don't exactly know how it works, but it does apparently.
Yeah, my mom's on Wellbutrin
Yeah.
too. They use it for a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And another person I talked to earlier this week was on Wellbutrin for ADHD for a while and said that it helped them quite a bit. So we're on the first week of trying that to see how that works. And it was nice to have that acknowledgement that I haven't gotten from other professionals. So in that moment, I genuinely felt like I was in good hands. I've mentioned before that my primary care provider is like the gayest person at that particular branch, and it felt weirdly like a queer community unit or moment, like
Mhm.
talking about like the trans stuff. It was just like it was very procedural, I guess, in that we discussed timelines and availabilities and things like that, and that felt very sort of custodial, sort of, but like actually being heard on an issue that I've been trying to address for like 5 years now. It felt really good. I really like my care team for the most part. So that's,
That's good.
yeah. How about you? How have you received care in the last week?
My mom went to her sister's house
Hmm.
for about 10 days. So dad and I had a chance to not have to do that.
Yeah.
I want to say we rested, but we were both really busy.
Yeah.
Dad had his community Christmas concert. I had the Christmas market. So we were busy doing other things, but it was still a way of family care in that we weren't worried about mom and
Yeah.
we got to kind of focus on each other and ourselves for a while. And there was another one that oh, my dad's going to pick up my prescriptions today because,
Oh,
yeah, so I don't have to drive
don't have to drive in the big fluffy snow.
in the snow. It's slippery out too.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't have to drive. And I don't like driving in the winter if I don't have to. Like I'll go to
Yeah.
work and that's all I want to do.
Yeah.
And then in 2 days I'm getting my mammogram.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just just a lot going on right now.
Yeah.
But still trying to make sure I'm taking care of all my needs.
Yeah.
So, but dad's Christmas concert was really good. I mean, it's not just dad's. Like my hometown does this huge, it's called Swinging Into Christmas. And the community choir and the community jazz band and then the children's choir and there's soloists and it's a big deal in my hometown. And they actually did two performances of it this year. And both were very well attended. And it was good. It was just really good.
Good.
Music is a big thing in
Yeah.
my town, and I enjoy hearing my dad sing because not only do I get to go to the performance, but I get to hear him practicing his parts and singing in the shower and
Yeah.
walking around the house singing his favorite song that they're doing
Yeah.
that year. He's still singing it.
Yeah.
Like the concert's over, but he's still singing his favorite song, and
Mm.
it's just singing makes my dad joyful, and so then
Yeah.
that joy is pretty infectious.
Yeah. One of the things that I like about your town is the amount of respect for arts and culture that the town has, which is something that a lot of people don't associate with small towns. And when I'm up there and when we're both feeling well enough to do stuff in the community, like that in itself feels really refreshing and like a form of like community care, like everyone's acknowledging
Yes.
everyone else and the talents everyone else has.
You know, there is a spring art show every May, visual art.
Uh-huh.
There's a musical every summer.
Yeah.
Our high school one act team has been consistently going from regionals to state since I was in high school. So for
Yeah.
over 20 years, our speech team is really quite good. There's this Christmas concert's been going on since I was in junior high.
Yeah.
I asked my dad when the men's choir started, and that was in 1998. So he's been
Huh.
singing with the men's choir since 98. He also used to do quartets, duets, trios, all kinds of stuff. The high school band and choir are really good. There's a children's choir, like,
You have like a community jazz band. And you're a
Yeah,
town of like 1,200-ish people.
800.
Oh, geez.
I mean, it's probably closer to 1,200 if you include the whole rural,
The surrounding
the
area.
townships. Yeah, but
Yeah.
the town itself is between 8 and 900 people.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad introduced me to somebody who's in the choir, and he's only been in town for about a year. He said, and we hear this from people who come to see our stuff. It's remarkable how much musical talent there is in a town this small,
Yeah.
and it is really special. And now
Yeah.
there's my neighbor that I used to babysit runs a dance studio
Oh,
and
neat.
teaches dance from everybody. There were little like preschoolers who did a dance
Huh.
at the concert, and it was so cute. I almost died from cute overload. So like from preschool up to high school kids, she teaches dance.
Oh, wow.
It's really cool.
That is cool.
Yeah, it is a really special thing about where I live. I mean, there are things that are tough here too. We don't have a grocery
Yeah.
store. We don't have a
Yeah.
pharmacy. That makes it hard. A lot of people live with some pretty tight economic situations.
Yeah.
But we do try to take care of each other, you know.
Yeah. You mentioned Chris Kindle Market, and usually you keep me like pretty informed about that stuff from year to year, but this year I know that you went and I know that you came home, and that was about it.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh man. It
so how was that this year?
I sold one painting and three ornaments, and I gave away two business cards. I did not sell any of my Moo Deng hippos at Chris Kindle Market, but since I got home, I've sold six of them
Oh, that's great.
to collectors. Yep. So I only have a few left.
You should describe those.
Oh yeah. So my goddaughter and niece, who is 12 years old, is obsessed with hippos, and she's also an artist. And so this year I thought she might want to help me with my booth. And this was I was trying to be a shrewd business person. I don't do well at Chris Kindle Market. um, generally.
Yeah.
Compared to all the other booths, I do probably the worst because I'm selling fine art, which is my job. And
Yeah.
everything I sell is priced significantly higher than every other booth, in part because fine art costs more than
Yeah.
barnwood signs.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not my side hustle. This is my job. And a lot of, except for like the beekeepers
Mm-hmm.
who like having an apiary is their thing, almost everybody else there, it's their side hustle
Yeah.
or it's like the church bake sale.
Yeah.
So like people go there, they are waiting at the door when the doors open at 9 a.m. Then they make a beeline for St. Patrick's Catholic Church because that's where they do their Christmas baking every year. Like they just
Mm-hmm.
buy up whatever the Catholics have. They bring it home and wait for Christmas. But it's worth it because they have the same stuff every year and it's dependable. It tastes good. I usually buy at least one thing from one of the bake sales at the
Yeah.
Chris Kindle Market. And art is not an impulse buy. So like
Yeah.
people aren't usually going to Chris Kindle Market to buy a $400 painting.
Right.
So after my first year of realizing this, I had ornaments for sale, but I was next to a booth whose ornaments cost like a third of what mine did. I have adjusted my expectations and started bringing stuff that costs less or is like a lower access point.
Yeah.
Um, but this year I thought, well, if I have an adorable 12-year-old at my booth, I'll sell more stuff because my niece is like the world's best hype person. I mean, she's
It's true. Oh man.
Can you
Yeah.
imagine? Yeah. Well, she was sick. But anyway, she's obsessed with hippos, and so we've been sharing Wu Dang memes back and forth. And so I was like, "Hey, do you want to help me with my booth?" She's like, "Yes." I said, "Okay, I'm going to have ornaments, I'm going to have paintings, and then I'm going to make these special hippo paintings." She's like, "I want to keep the hippo paintings. I don't want to sell them." And I said, "If you help me with the booth, you can pick one to keep." Well, because she said, "Well, do I get to keep a cut of what I sell?" Because she is also a shrewd business person. And I actually offered to let her sell her own art because I thought, well, if she'll probably make more than I do. But I
Yeah.
also wanted to give her a chance to get a taste of what it's like to sell your art. She's
Yeah.
like, no, I don't want to sell any of it, but I'll help you. Can I have a cut? I said, you can have a hippo painting. And she's like, awesome. That's even better. Well, she and my brother were sick and they couldn't come. But I did let her pick one of the Mudang paintings. So they were 4x4 canvases with like a bubblegum pink background and
Uh-huh.
then pictures like I used like memes as like my inspo picture. So there
Yeah.
were 2 of her, like, sitting demurely. There were 2 of her, like, her face, like, a close-up of her face, like, diagonal on the canvas where
Mhm.
she's, like, kinda aggro. And then I made a few where she's, like, mouth open, but I didn't put the hose on. Like, so it's, like, where she's like, "Ah!"
Yeah.
But then instead instead of adding the water in the hose, I put Hot to Go by Chapel Roan on there. So it's, like, it says HOTTOGO, with, like, the hyphens and everything.
Yeah.
Um, becau because the first episode of SNL this season, Bowen Yang dressed up as Deng and, like, did a riff on Chapel Roan's boundary setting about,
Yeah.
like, "This is my job. You don't get to approach me. Like, respect my privacy, respect my boundaries," but, like, as Deng. And I
Yeah.
thought that was so uproariously hilarious. I was like, "Wh," like, these are the 2 icons of the summer.
Right.
Chapel Roan and Deng. Bowen Yang, also an icon. So that's, like, 3 icons, 2 of which are gay,
Yeah.
and I'm like, "How can I not put this on a canvas and sell it?" So, that they're fabulous. They were harder than I thought they would be. I thought I could whip out 8 in a day. That
Yeah.
was pure hubris. The house was too dry for me to be doing acrylic painting because my paint was drying out on the palette.
Oh,
Yeah, it was super frustrating, but I did get it to work, and now I've sold over half of them, and
good.
people are, like, really stoked about them. Yeah, so at Chris Kindlemark, I did sell 1 painting. It was my anglerfish with the big scary teeth.
Yeah.
Um, someone loved that one, bought that, and then I sold some ornaments, my snowflake ornaments. So,
Cool.
yeah. And as usual, dad helped me set up and tear down, and
Mhm.
yeah, it's kind of our thing now because, like, I can carry boxes, but then I end up so fatigued I can't do anything.
Yeah.
So, it's our little we get up early in the morning and we go in, and then he goes home and takes a nap while I sell, and then he comes back at 2 and helps me tear down, and
Cool.
yeah. And then I usually get super hungry and buy something and munch on it while I'm selling, and this year it was caramel corn, and it was the best
Ooh.
caramel corn ever. My dad always buys a little thing of creamed honey from the apiary.
Mhm.
That's his little treat. Yep.
Yeah.
So so, like I mentioned earlier about the time I was in the airport and I didn't have anything to eat,
Uh-huh.
and, before that, I mentioned my mom was Christmas baking. I think about food a lot, and this comes up on the podcast, but there was an article yesterday, if I may take the conversation a direction.
Yeah.
There was an article yesterday about an influencer, um, who was she's a Disney she passed away. She was a Disney influencer, but this didn't happen at a Disney event. But she was
Mhm.
invited to an event by I think they're called Lunchbox or Box Lunch. I have to look it up. I just Okay, she was the co-founder of Black Girl Disney. Her name is Dominique Brown. She was invited to a holiday gathering from the pop culture retail company Box Lunch. She
Okay.
has severe food allergies. She
Oh.
told them ahead of time, "I have a peanut allergy."
Oh, no.
And they're like, "Yep, we have it handled." She went into anaphylactic shock at the event, and she died.
That's awful.
Yeah. People on Threads were talking about it pretty extensively yesterday. Some people were like, "Well, why didn't she have an EpiPen?" Well, most of the people who were saying that either weren't from the US, they're
Yeah.
from countries where their EpiPens don't cost $300 a piece,
Yeah.
or they're from the US and they don't have food allergies and they don't realize that EpiPens don't fix everything.
Yeah.
So, like, I read that article and I was like, "Oh, that's so scary," because I have food allergies. I'm allergic to peanuts and tree nuts
Yeah.
and among other things. And then my mom came home with all the Christmas cookies. Some of the Christmas cookies she made were peanut butter cookies with, like, the chocolate star in the top because she really likes those.
Uh-huh.
She offered me a peanut butter cookie, and I was like, "Oh, no, thanks. I can't eat those." She goes, "Oh, I didn't want you to eat one. I wanted you to look at them." It's like, "Oh, well, yes, they look very nice." Well, then she offered me our traditional Christmas cookie, which are, like, the spritz cookies from the that we use the cookie gun for,
Yep.
the cookie shooter. And I was like, "Hang on." I said, "I have to text your sister. I have to text my aunt." So I texted my aunt and I was like, "Hey, did you use imitation almond extract or like genuine real almond extract on the spritz cookies this year?" because I have an almond allergy. And when we bake them here at the house, I can keep track of what gets put in the food.
Yeah.
And I had packed my mom's box of ingredients and I had included the imitation almond. And my aunt said, "Oh, it was real. I guess I forgot. Did your mom pack imitation?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's what I sent with her." And
Yeah.
they just didn't use it. So now we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Christmas cookies that I can't
Yeah.
eat.
Yeah.
Which, let me tell you, super frustrating. They smell
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
I felt so defeated last night. Like, I know it wasn't done maliciously,
Mhm.
like, I don't expect every family member to keep track of all my allergies because there's
Yeah.
so many.
Yeah.
But, like, when I'm asked to pack a box of ingredients and I do, I sort of expect them to be used. Like, I
Right.
feel like that, but I shouldn't. Like,
Yeah.
part of me is like, I just need to alter my expectations. But, like, around the holidays, especially, I get really, really fraught. It's a really,
Yeah.
really fraught time for me for eating anywhere.
Yeah.
We went to my sister's for Thanksgiving, and we were eating at a restaurant that had a buffet. And I was like, we had checked the menu before we went, and I knew there was going to be enough for me to eat. And we got there, and the salads were all pre-made, and they all had nuts on them.
Oh.
And I was like, I love salad. And there was one that didn't have nuts, but there was something on there. I'm like, "Hey, Katie, can you taste this for me?" And she did. And she goes, "Oh, that was a little tiny onion." She's like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like, "Okay, well, I can eat it." But then, like, they'd already put vinegar salad dressing on it.
Oh.
And I have to be really careful about how much vinegar I eat.
Yeah.
And so, like, holidays are already really fraught. And then my comfort food now, my cookies, they don't have, I can't have
Yeah.
cookies. I don't know where I'm going with this. It's just
Yeah.
something that's on my mind. And there was one comment yesterday that really pissed me off on social media, and it was like, "Well, so many people lie about food allergies. It's hard to know when people with real allergies are telling the truth." It's
Yeah.
like, you know what? Believe every single person that says they have a
Yeah.
food allergy. It's not worth killing somebody because you think other
Yeah.
people are faking.
Yeah. Well, that reminds me a lot of the conversations like here here we are getting back into the territory we were in last Christmas. When Trump first took office and he was trying to institute all that really ridiculous Islamophobic, we're gonna prevent people from like these 16 specific Middle Eastern countries from coming in.
Mhm.
And the rhetoric at the time was like, if you have a bowl full of
The poison Skittles.
the poison Skittles, yeah, the way that we as a society assume the worst in people.
Yeah. Well, that came up too in a conversation about health insurance this
Yeah,
week, where someone said, "Well, if we had universal health care, there would be people who would exploit it." It's meant to be used.
yeah,
Like, what's it for? It exists so people use it and,
yeah,
like, take advantage of. It has a negative connotation, but, like,
yeah.
use the thing so you are like, stay healthy?
How do you abuse being more healthy? Yeah,
Yeah, how do you exploit universal health care? "Oh
yeah,
god, I'm gonna go get my free EpiPens so I
yeah.
don't die." Oh my god.
Meanwhile, my mother-in-law has EpiPens sitting in her purse from like 7 years ago because they can't afford to get new ones
Yeah,
because she has a bee allergy.
I have one of those too.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Yep.
Well, like, when we were remember when we were at Peter and Ashley's and we went out to eat and we were trying to figure out where we could eat that wouldn't kill all of us?
Uh,
'Cause
yeah.
between the 4 of us, we had how many food allergies? But
Right.
then we, like, counted and we had, like, 10 like 8 or 10 EpiPens, and we're like, "Oh, we'll be fine."
Yeah.
Like, we went somewhere where we could each handpick our food, and then we're like, "If there's a
Mhm.
problem, we're good in an emergency.
Yeah.
We know where the hospitals are."
We will at least live long enough to possibly live longer.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, because we all had such incompatible needs.
Yeah.
Wild. Yeah, I'm just thinking about the food that's in my fridge right now that I wanna go
Yeah.
eat.
I
Like, I have really good leftovers that are allergy friendly in my
yeah.
fridge right now.
Yeah.
But, like, my dad, it's like, I was actually saying something to my dad about it last night, the difference between the 2 families, and I have a really hard time talking about it And I don't write about it on Facebook anymore because I did hurt one of my aunt's feelings pretty deeply one time talking about the families because I was overly general.
Yep.
I don't want to say one side good, one side bad because that's not true enough.
Yeah.
There are members of my mom's side of the family who have made my life more difficult. And there are
Yeah.
members of my dad's side of the family who have been much more of an anchor and a rock for me.
Yeah.
That doesn't apply to every single member of both sides of the family. But like I have an aunt on my dad's side who will call me and read a recipe to me before she bakes to make sure that I can eat it.
Yep.
My dad remembers certain things that I can and can't have, and he brings me treats, because that's my mom never figured out that chicken isn't vegetarian, like before she had dementia. And that was before all the food allergies. Like that was when I was just like a vanilla vegetarian. She just never figured it out. She just didn't really care.
Well,
She's like,
yeah.
that's too hard. I don't know what you eat. I'm like, the root of vegetarian is vegetable.
Yeah.
But also my mom doesn't believe in vegetables. Like she believes they exist. She just doesn't
Yeah.
she doesn't believe in eating them.
Yeah. Unless it's potatoes.
And tomatoes. But tomatoes are a fruit. So it's just
Yeah.
potatoes. Just French
Yeah.
fries.
Yep.
Baked potatoes. And so like the difference between pack these ingredients, oops, I forgot to use them, and calling me on the phone and saying, I found this recipe for brownies. Can I read the instructions? Can I read it to you and see if you can eat them? Like it's just so stark.
Yeah. And it goes toward that type of thinking where people that don't have to deal with an issue don't believe it exists.
Mm-hmm.
Like that goes along with like, oh, people lie about food allergies so often, or
Mm-hmm.
like just because it doesn't happen to you personally doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. Living life as someone with food allergies or fatigue symptoms or mental illness or more obvious things, more outwardly obvious things, that type of living is so different from an able-bodied life. Like I have so many friends that have mobility problems and use canes or walkers or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And the amount of people that as soon as they see another person take a single step without using their mobility aid are like they're faking.
Mobility problems are so dynamic.
Yeah.
I can go from having like pretty regular mobility to like almost needing a cane
Yeah.
depending on the weather.
And it's really distressing that people don't have not even just the empathy, but the imagination to consider that life might be different
Mm-hmm.
for other people. And now that I think about it, I think that's where a lot of the moments that I feel most cared for are the ones that are like, yes, your reality is valid. What you're describing is real. Like, even if the Wellbutrin that I'm taking doesn't really help all that much, but I think it might be. But even if it doesn't, the acknowledgement that there are steps that may be taken for a problem that I actually have, like that in itself feels like the essence of care to me, which is weirdly something I don't think we've really gotten around to talking about on this podcast that much.
On our podcast about care, like what is like what does that mean?
Like we have what does that look like, but
Mm-hmm.
where does it come from? I think is something we
Mm.
don't talk about as much. And so many of our guests have been like, my partner did this for me, or my family has helped me in some way, or I got professional assistance in this. And it really seems to me like the unspoken part of that is that when receiving care, like feeling like you're a person with a real issue.
Being seen, heard, and understood.
Yeah. And when I think about it, just to fuse two items here, I think that's like part of art as well. I think I'm making breakthroughs on our own podcast about our own podcast.
So meta.
Because like that that connection in itself can be healing, I think.
Absolutely.
Because like you mentioned the person that bought that anglerfish painting. You said it spoke to them like right away.
Yeah, he saw it. He's like, ooh. And he flipped it around to look at the back where I have the title written. He
Mm-hmm.
guffawed. He goes,
Yeah.
oh, that's dark. I love it. And he bought, it
Yeah.
was like a 2-minute transaction. Yep.
Yeah. So.
If I can add one thing about that I think dovetails with this, when I was teaching middle school, I had a student who came in the middle of the quarter, which is really hard for a
Yeah.
teacher to integrate into a class. And she was on grade level, which most of my students weren't. So I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, what do I do? Well, I gave her the book, The House on Mango Street by Sandra
Mm-hmm.
Cisneros. And I was like, read this and then tell me about it. Because I was like, I'm used to working with kids who are really far behind and need a lot more support. I just want you to read this and then tell me about it. And then from there, we will figure out what we're going to do with you in my English class. And she got done reading it and she's like, I have never read a book that made me feel so Mexican.
Mm.
She's like, no one's ever let me read a book that felt so real to me. And I was like, yes. If that's all you tell me about the book, that's fine. You don't have to give me a summary of the chapters. You don't have to tell me what you think of the author. If you saw yourself in this book and like you read through the whole thing, if you loved it, like you saw yourself
Mm-hmm.
in it, then like we have established a relationship in this classroom and the rest of your time here is going to be fine. Because the reason you're here is because you were playing hooky before, like you weren't going to school, we had all these social and emotional problems. If you're here and you feel connected and you feel seen, like that's all I need right now.
Yeah.
Like I'm not worried about you anymore. Like I'm gonna teach you and like focus on you and nurture you. I'm not gonna like ignore you because you're not behind. But like this is what I needed right now.
Yep.
Also, Sandra Cisneros is an amazing writer, and that
Yeah.
is a fabulous book. But that is what good art does.
That communication between the artist and the viewer or listener or experiencer, depending on what sort of art we're talking about, that feels like a connection that, you know, what we need to do is we need to find somebody that is an art therapist.
Oh, I know one.
Do you?
Yeah,
Ooh.
our family friend Nancy,
Oh, really?
who's the nursing home administrator. She's got her start doing art therapy or music therapy. One of them. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what her degree is in.
That's really cool and explains a lot.
Everything, really. It explains everything.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are well past time,
Yeah, we are. I'm going to make a note
but this needs editing or that we want to talk to Nancy.
that we want to talk to Nancy.
Well, my original idea for this podcast was for her to co-host with me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but then the idea for the podcast morphed into something different. So anyway, we'll edit this part out and then I'll
Yep.
say, well, I don't think I have to ask you about your one true thing because I think we kind
I
of hit
think
on
that
it.
came out
I think we
naturally. Yeah.
we, we kind of hit on it organically by trying to analyze our own podcast.
Yeah,
Look, some of the spaghetti stuck to the wall.
indeed.
And now I'm going to go eat noodles.
I don't know what I'm going to eat. I may go steal a pizza roll from Nat. I don't know.
Taking food out of your own child's mouth.
They just said, I got to eat them all fast now. Anyway.
Well, thank you for recording with me. I guess our like a Christmas episode is just our tradition now. Sort of like we're going to have Andrew on for episode 10 every season. This went directions I wasn't expecting. I'm glad we didn't have notes. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Blessed Yule. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Hoorf. To get the complete show notes and all the links mentioned on today's episode, or to get a full transcript of the episode, visit hoorfpodcast.com. Join the blessed herd of St. Winkus. By signing up for our newsletter, you can get Hoorf episodes delivered directly to your inbox. What's more, you get invitations to our monthly Coffee and Biscuits Chat, where you get to hang out with Ricki and Elle, talk about the show, and connect on the topics that mean the most to you. You can sign up for that at hoorfpodcast.com. If you become a patron for only $3 a month, you can support the creation of this podcast, help pay my editor, and join a community of caregivers out here just doing our best. Thank you again for joining me, Elle Billing, the chronically ill queer femme who is very tired, on this episode of Hoorf. Until next time, be excellent to each other. Hoorf is hosted by Elle Billing at Elle & Wink. Audio editing by Ricki Cummings at Ricki Poo. Music composed by Ricki Cummings. Hoorf is a production of Elle & Wink Art Studio LLC, all rights reserved. Hoorf can be found on all social media platforms at Hoorf Podcast, at HOORF Podcast. Taking food out of your own child's mouth.